Hey again, this is Franz, Fractal Trading. Let's have a look at the major market movements and where you can make the big money if you have the patience. The chart that you see is the monthly chart of gold, the CFD, and let's have a little look here at the current overall situation. On the monthly, what you will find is the major trend direction. You don't want to bother too much about a 4-hour trend direction. Let's have a look at where the major market movement is going on the highest of all time frames. Of course, you could switch to the quarterly chart, but at what point does that make sense? Let's stick with time frames that actually satisfy the needs of the trader. At some point, you gotta make some coin. On this monthly chart, as we've talked about this before, you have your correction here. The trend is up. This correction, as I said before, is merely it's a major correction, as you can see down here in the oscillator. It's going below zero. Still, this correction doesn't retrace too much of this previous uptrend. We're looking at a monthly chart, so before this correction can really find its end, you will have a long time to pass. In this case, you went into the correction at this point here sometime in 2012, and here 2016. That's 4 years. We are looking at the correction in gold. However, let's focus on what is going on now and not complain too much about what hasn't happened in the last couple of years. There wasn't really any money to be made in gold. This move could have been traded, but all of this little stuff down here is not going to make you too much money, since the trend is not too obvious. You get retracements all the way back into the balance zone, and this usually makes for very difficult stop situations, and you don't get any momentum into your trade direction. So let's focus on what is happening now, because the situation has improved. In this time span here, some time at the beginning of 2016, this year, to the point right now, you do see prices coming up from the low of the correction. Hopefully the low. We don't know. Price could still come back down in the worst case scenario. But from the low of this correction here, just around $1,000 on gold, we have zoomed through the balance zone, and we are now trading on top of it. During these 3 months, you can see that the balance zone is really acting as some sort of a resistance. Price is not able to zoom right up. Instead, it takes a little bit of a break here in this area. It's worth to be mentioned that there is no fractal created at that point. Remember, a fractal is not something magic. It simply shows you the support and resistance levels, very important support and resistance levels, directly created by the price. We're not deriving anything. We're not doing any calculations. We're just looking at the price movements, looking at five candles, and determining the high. If you have a high in the middle of those 5 candles with 2 lower highs to the left and 2 higher highs to the right, you will get a fractal, and this is a decision change. The market will change its mind and go to the downside in our case to resume its upwards direction later on, hopefully, if it makes another fractal before it hits that low. This has not happened here yet. Even though you do get this little breathing phase, this pause at the blue line, you have prices continuing higher. At this point here, we haven't even been trading too far away from the balance zone. Instead, we are going relatively healthy, relatively slowly to the upside. This is only the middle of August here, the 12th of August, and as you can see on this month, not too much has happened yet. Actually, I'm expecting this to go lower, maybe even giving us a fractal here at this point, and then continuing higher to what I've mentioned before, the previous all-time highs in gold, which are here just around 18 or 1900, depending on the chart you're looking at. If you look at this CFD like I do, you will have a different pricing on depending on your broker. It's very possible, in my opinion, that after we have seen this move through the alligator or through the balance zone, you get your fractal on top of it, which means August will be lower, September will be lower, and only then will you come up to the upside with a substantial movement. This is, in my opinion, a pretty healthy price action. You don't want to see prices moving on the monthly chart too heavily to the upside. It's a different kind of story if we're talking about bearish markets, but when it comes to bullish scenarios, you do want to look at the slow market trends to the upside, giving you pretty much perfect fractal entry signals. You will get prices moving from the low of the correction to the upside. You get your fractal just above the balance zone, a little bit of a retracement, and then you have your breakout fractal entry to the upside. It doesn't really matter what you use for your breakout entry. You can simply count the bars and say if you get a higher high compared to the previous 10 bars, or pick a number, you just long this thing. I'm using fractals. You can use pivot points. Some people are using supply and demand, even though that's a little tricky due to the issue of picking tops and bottoms. But let's just simply focus on the fractal. If we get a fractal here at that point at the end of September and then have markets moving out, then that would be very healthy price action. If you are long already here, since we are probably not, or you are not trading the monthly chart, I'm not trading the monthly chart, we are probably looking at the weekly or daily. We can see that prices are staying above the balance zone here on this weekly chart. First fractal is down here. Depending on your stop, please refer to that last video that I uploaded. There are various kind of stops that you can use if you trade a trend following approach. You may be a little bit more short-term oriented in the trend or in a trend regard. You may be a little bit more middle or long-term oriented. Since I like to really let the market play out, I would be taking this fractal as a current stop here. I would not have been stopped out as price comes into the balance zone, going below this fractal. I would simply wait, since I believe in this turnaround that I just talked about here on the monthly. If we go down on the monthly, hitting this balance zone again, our stop is, in my opinion, in a pretty good place. You want to look for that fractal inside of the balance zone. This one is not inside of the balance zone, so you would be stopped out if you take that as a stop, which would be totally fine. If you enter down here, you exit at that point, you catch the major price trend profits. If you have a little bit more patience, which I'm trying to show for myself here, you are still in that market in the last 5 weeks up here at that top right now. They haven't done anything. They have been just moving sideways. This fractal here has been taken as well. You get continuous breakouts to the upside. You can see it here too. Just hold on, show the patience, follow the market trend to the upside in this case, hopefully. You do have a monthly price action above the balance zone. You have every reason to hold your position on the weekly chart. Even on the daily, you want to look for entries to the long side only. Don't go short. That would be the killer, because it looks like it's breaking out to the downside as the market is entering a correction. We will have a look at that in a moment, but it's actually not. It's retracing immediately because you have an overall trend monthly chart that is moving to the upside. So there is only one place or one direction that you want to trade towards to. These 5 weeks here are the most boring period you can possibly experience when you take a trade. On the other hand, it's the best kind of a scenario you can experience. You don't want markets to move out at that point here. Look at this. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 candles in a row, closing higher and really moving away from the balance zone. If this continues for another 3 or 4 candles, you will be so far away from the balance zone that a massive pullback is inevitable. This pullback is often kind of uncontrolled. The market is going a little bit crazy. You have a lot of people taking their profits. You have people entering shorts. A lot of different interests are in the market. And if you have a price moving away far and quickly with a lot of angulation and distance from the balance zone, then that means that the pullback will be equally rapid. And that just means you have a lot of volatility in your account and in your long position. Thankfully, this is not what's happening here. We are just retracing. After those 6 candles moved up so quickly during that 6-week period, you get your retracement. And what we want to see, and this week kind of supports that, you see prices going higher. Here you have quite the wig, but we are not able to close above here, or to close up here, or even higher, maybe even above this fractal. You should have a long order, a breakout buy in here, but you don't really want this to be triggered too soon. Even though we want to stay back, we don't want to put out opinions. Our opinions don't matter because we are just one participant in the market. We are one of a million participants, especially in such a huge market as gold. So we don't want to pressure our opinion on our trading decisions. We want to follow the market, and right now that means hold on to your longs. You're on top of the balance zone on the monthly, and you're above the balance zone on the weekly chart as well. What I'm expecting here in gold is a movement somewhere down here, maybe towards the red line, before we can go higher, but don't expect this to be a surge. Expect this to be just a usual market movement, retracing again and again before you get your actual breakout above this fractal. If we get that, if this scenario should unfold, of course this doesn't look good now on the monthly chart. If we should get that, we could get this fractal here end of September, and then we have the breakout happening on the monthly chart. Just imagine you see this price in towards the end of August and towards the end of September coming down, testing the balance zone again, which again mark very important support areas in an uptrend, and then you get your breakout, your first fractal breakout on the monthly chart. Now, there may be people now who are already doubting their long position, who are going short, whatever. Let's follow the market trend. Let's follow the major price action. And the major price action on the weekly and on the monthly is definitely going to the upside. I wouldn't be too surprised though to see the market coming down lower, heading into the balance zone on the weekly chart, which would mean we are still holding our longs. Our stop is not below that fractal. Our stop is somewhere down here, maybe below this candle. If you really have the account and the risk management in place, you can even put your stop really at the last fractal inside the balance zone. That is the safest place to let this uptrend play out. So you can expect another 6 weeks at least for this market to correct. That's at least my opinion. In this regard, I'm still holding my longs. I'm not questioning my long position. I don't expect a rapid market movement to the downside, even though there could be a week going heavily down. That doesn't mean that you will see follow through, negating all of this upwards trending action here. It will take a lot to stop this. This essentially means that you're long in the market, probably from that fractal breakout. If you have the nerves, you're long from that fractal breakout here. You're only taking the stops inside the balance zone, which means you're waiting for the fractal. That's where your new stop location is. This fractal here is outside the balance zone, so you don't care about it. In the last video that I posted, you can see how how you can place stops, how I place stops. You can be more short-term oriented in a trend, you can be longer-term oriented, and I definitely want to hold this until it really unfolded the way that I anticipated, even though my opinion doesn't matter. But there is some sort of technical understanding for every market, and everyone in the end trades their belief system, just like Bill Williams said. That does not mean that you're trading your opinion, but it means that you're choosing a way to stop out. Even if you trade a system, and if you have programmed your system, you will have programmed a shorter, a middle, or a long-term kind of a stop. Some people may say this is discretionary and you can backtest it and stuff like that, but it's not true. You have to decide for what kind of stop you want to take. In my case, I'm taking the longer term stop because I want to be in that for a year and a half to really unfold, to make that new high. And I want to add on during that trend all the time so I can really maximize my profits in this market movement. Saying that these 5 weeks, they don't matter, and I'm absolutely willing to have this market come down more, even though I'm holding long. Let's take a look at the daily chart. You have your divergence in here, which indicates lower prices. You don't want to count the waves, but what you do want to understand is that if you have a wave coming up here, you get your correction, you have a new high, another correction, a fractal here at that point. Remember, a fractal is a change in decision. You're coming down, you get your fractal, and now we're picking up the uptrend. We're making new highs. There's a lot of supply in here, a lot of demand in this area, right below this correction here. This was a major correction on the daily chart. We are going below the low of this fractal where price decided to come up again, breaking this high. But now we are coming lower than this fractal, which simply means that with this correction here, we have corrected this upwards movement. And with this huge or bigger correction here, which definitely went lower than this one is staying much closer to the balance zone, while this one is moving away from the balance zone. Going below that fractal is actually correcting the movement from down here to up here. And now prices are continuing up. They are not going maybe into kind of this area, not making a new high, and going lower, which would kind of negate our uptrend on the higher time frame. We would be into the balance zone on the monthly and the daily chart and the weekly chart much sooner, but that's not what's happening. We are actually staying above the balance zone. The uptrend continues, and now these are the 5 weeks that I just showed you on the weekly chart, and we are not into a major correction just yet. We are staying above the 0 line on the momentum oscillator, but that is something that's not enough right now to get into the continuation of the uptrend, to really reach that new high on the weekly and the monthly chart in gold. 1800, 1900, we will see 2000, maybe we will see 3000. It doesn't really matter what the number is. The fact is that you follow the trend, you don't know where it's going to end, and you just want to stay with it and follow the market action. You have your fractal down here. Price went down from the high, changed its mind, it didn't want to continue up, and comes down into the balance zone. It's breathing, it's taking a pause. However, it's not entering a major type of correction. It's failing at the blue line, which is always a very nice support level. You can see that here. You can see it in this area as well as here. My guess, and this is just a guess, this is an opinion, is that we will do something like that. We will go down, we will enter a major correction, and then at this area where you see a lot of demand, you will see buying again, and we will continue the overall uptrend. We just moved through the balance zone on the monthly chart, as I explained. This kind of market behavior here could very well take a month and a half, 2 months. And this would be exactly what we want to see to have gold continue to the upside. And this should not become any difficult or stop us out on the weekly, if we're trading the weekly. If you're trading the daily chart, you would probably have entered on this fractal again for the trend continuation, but as you can see, it's getting a little difficult. You get your next fractal inside the balance zone. Your stop should definitely be at that point now. If it's hit on Monday, we are pretty close to it, you are exiting with a very small loss. Remember, initially, when you enter on this fractal, your stop is below that fractal, and now you're actually pulling your stop up tight. Your initial risk should never be more than 2% of your entire equity, and therefore, if you can pull it up tight here, the loss, you won't even feel it. You know, it's just you have to pay that loss in order to be there for the trend continuation as soon as it happens. Even if it doesn't happen here, it goes below that support line, you will see, most likely, you will see that uptrend continuation, just like I marked it here. And as you can see, we're hitting the red line, and then maybe we are going out. The same is true for the silver chart. Again, looking at the CFD, you get your 5 weeks, 6 weeks of correction time well above the balance zone. Don't worry about this too much. As long as you don't have a fractal inside the balance zone, you don't have to pull your stop up tight. Just wait for the market to play out, and then it continues up. Let's take a look at the indices here really quickly. Nothing really has changed, you know. You get your breakouts after the major correction. The major correction can be observed as the oscillator goes to the other side of the zero line in an uptrend. It goes below the zero line. And then you get your breakouts towards the old trend direction. What question do you have? Why are you not long? You know, so many people calling the top. No reason for that. This is probably the start of a new bull market. This may go to wherever. I have no idea. Just follow the market trend. You don't know if this is going to 5,000 or 10,000 or wherever. You just want to follow, and as the market or your system is giving you the signals, you want to add on to your signals. If you take a look at the momentum indicator, just these couple of weeks have produced such a high momentum. All of this has produced this kind of momentum. We are pretty close to that. We are not even halfway through, if you want to look at the amount of candles, where we have been at that point. You know, we have much less candles than we did have at that point. So this indicates that there is really some strength into that. And the more people who are saying that this is the top and we're gonna go short, and I think that Mark Farber has posted or has announced once again that he thinks the market is gonna crash and it's gonna lose 50%. You want to buy. You really want to buy. You don't want to pay attention to these people, even if they are the great investors or the greatest investors in the world. Trade your system, because the market knows much more than they do. They depend on their experience. You don't know what their approach really is. Just trade your system and you're going to be on the right side of the market. It doesn't matter how long the move is and how much you can add on. You will just be always on the right side, and that huge trend eventually is gonna come, so you want to be there when that happens. Let's take a look at the US dollar here. Another, well, a week where we're not moving that much higher, but we're also not correcting that much lower either. You have your fractal breakout at that point, which worked here pretty well, but for the last 3 weeks we see a retracement back inside and just below the balance zone. This week was very interesting because prices had a downwards orientation. If you look at the daily chart here, you can see that the breakout occurred at that point. We already saw that the US dollar had some trouble pulling away to the upside into our trading position, or into the direction of our trading position. It retraced, but it doesn't really retrace that much. It doesn't retrace more to the downside than it had been going to the upside. Now we're trading just like on top of that zone. If you go even lower, like have a look at the hourly chart, look at this. You can just see how this candle here produced or was produced by some sort of news. I have no idea which news. I don't care about which news. The next couple of hours here in this Friday trading, you can see that the market is really not bothered about the news. The news comes out, the market reacts to the news, and as soon as the news has been as soon as the market has devoured the news, then it remains, or it remains in its previous kind of state. It comes back to where it wanted to be in the first place. And before the news, it wanted to be in this area. And look at where we're closing out the week. It's exactly that area. You have your fractal down here, and we're closing exactly on that fractal level. You don't have to ask any other question. This news is BS. Just wait for the market to continue the overall trend. And the overall trend is clearly up. We have this huge up move here. It's continued in this case. And now there was, or previously there has been this correction, but the fractal breakout has already occurred. It's very, very likely that we are going to continue to the upside. And as you can see here, when we draw this line from this low of the fractal, it hasn't even been hit, you know? It hasn't even been hit. We've just stopped and turned around twice before it hitting a fractal into the trend direction. So the probability is definitely on the side of going long, and you don't want to bug the market by jumping in and out or even placing shorts. The last market we're going to cover this week, or the second last, is the euro dollar. Really, really annoying. I'm still of the opinion that these breakouts marked by those black lines here, especially the first one, they're still valid. Our stop is on top of this fractal here because we don't have another one here yet. If the market doesn't go higher next week, we will see a fractal here, then we have a new stop location. But until then, it's just a waiting game. The market hasn't been going for 2 months. It has broken through here on the Brexit candle, but for 2 months it hasn't done anything. Now, it's not up to you to decide how fast the market should be moving down or how much it should be moving down. You are just following your rules, and if your rules say that you should be stopped out by a fractal inside or on top of the balance zone, and you don't have a fractal, then you don't get stopped out. Okay, you just wait for it. Even though it's quite annoying to see how the market keeps bouncing into the balance zone. It's very easy for the market to even go higher. But that's why you calculate your risk. You never know if something like this holds and then continues down, or if at some point it's just gonna pop out. So you want to make sure that at that point, as you enter your trade here at that breakout, and your stop is here above that candle, you want to make sure that this doesn't cost you more than 2%. So even if you are stopped out, you lost 2%. So who cares? You know, it's 2%. Very last market that we're going to look at is the British pound, and I prefer the British pound Australian here because I'm short. And as you can see, I've actually marked my entries here, even though I've not marked all of my entries. These are all of my entries. You get your fractal breakout at that point. Prices have come down, corrected, and then broke through the low. And then you get another candle very, very decisively to the downside. That's where my second entry was. And now we have another fractal breaking, and we're going to the downside. To get the overall picture, you could zoom in, or you could switch to the monthly. You could also zoom in the weekly chart, and what you see is that over here, as I mentioned before, you don't have a lot of support. We are moving right through all of those weeks here, 4 weeks. They don't really mean that much. The retracement hasn't even happened really. It's just an internal type of correction, and now we're breaking out to the downside again. This does not mean that the market couldn't come up here again, where the cursor is right now, but it's highly probable that it's not going to close inside the balance zone, that you won't get a fractal inside the balance zone, because this would mean that there is a lot of upwards pressure. You get a lot of, or a very strong rally into this downwards market, into this bearish market. Right now it doesn't look like this is very probable. So you just want to stay short, keep your stop somewhere in this area just below the first entry to make sure you break even on the first position, because we're so far away from it, and then let it go. Probably hitting this area down here. I mean, we're talking really long term. This can take half a year, this could take 1 year until it's down here again, because it comes down, it retraces, it takes some time, comes down, retraces, takes some time, and then comes down again. Of course, it could also happen in 3 months. No one knows. Just hold on, follow the market. And in this regard, it's looking pretty good. The gold positions are working out. The indices positions are working out, as well as the British pound positions. If we take a really short look again, like last week, at the S&P, I don't know why people are calling the top. We've just made new all-time highs. For some reason, some people think that making new all-time highs is a reason to go short and to assume that the market is done going to the upside. I think you couldn't be more wrong. If the market makes new all-time highs, you want to buy it, you want to go with it. And just like I mentioned before, the momentum is really high up there. And I'm just holding my position here in the S&P. Let's see where it goes. Thank you very much for watching the video again, and talk to you soon.